We're meeting for the mayor and for Councilmember Waring.
That's correct. And we are streaming live, just so everyone knows.
Good deal.
That means everybody behave.
Will do. How's everybody doing?
Everyone's good.
Good deal.
You're coming in kind of scratchy, Councilmember Rappel.
I am.
Your audio is a little scratchy.
How about now? A little bit better?
A little bit better, but still like you're.
I think it's better.
Hey, is Rick on the line? Rick Giroux?
He isn't, but the mayor's joining right now.
Okay, all right. Now we have a quorum. We'll wait one more minute and see if Councilman Waring, hello, Mayor.
Howdy. Hope y'all had a good weekend.
I had a wonderful weekend watching golf at Kiowa. That was wonderful.
Yeah, the golf was okay. You know, the scenery was so-so.
Yeah, the scenery was so-so. The golf was mundane. Is every day that a 50-year-old gets to win a Masters. Major tournament.
Let's just all agree that Charleston's nice, but Savannah's better.
I don't know. I don't know about that, Carol.
The word is out.
Yeah. All right, it is 2:33. I'm going to go ahead and call the real estate committee meeting to order. And Councilmember Appel, you are up to start us off with an invocation or a moment of silence, whatever is your preference.
Let's do a moment of silence today. Thank y'all. I guess that's a cue for the silence to be over.
Yes. So,
Sorry about that. Zoom has a new capability where it actually tells you when the recording has stopped and started.
Can I tell you that sounds rather annoying? And if
we shouldn't get it again until the meeting stops.
All right. We will soldier through it as is. The first item on our agenda is the approval of our May 10, 2021 minutes.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
I'll take a second. Is there a second?
Guys, I think I may have to recuse myself from subsection A.
No, we're talking about the minutes right now.
Oh, y'all still are on the minutes.
Yeah, we need a second from somebody.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, any changes or modifications to the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Councilmember Rappel, you need to recuse yourself from item A. You telling us?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you need to file one of those conflict of interest forms with the clerk, I'll just remind you to do that. For the record, Councilmember Rappel has put himself on self-mute. The first item is a modification to a transfer agreement. We should have received a amended copy from Mr. McQueenie concerning this. This is, as I understand, an amended agreement from the 2019 agreement that we had dealing with the opportunity to create 6 single-family housing units out there. I know Chip is on the line, and Gianna, you want to lead us into that discussion, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. I'm glad to. So you all and Councilmember Shahid, I think it was January 2020, where Real Estate and City Council approved the transfer agreement between the City of Charleston and JJR Development LLC to build 6 single-family detached homes at 67 America Street. So the first item that we're asking the real estate committee to approve today is an amendment to that. The transfer agreement is traditionally a 12-month agreement. Of course, we sought the approval during COVID-19, but during that time, the engineering was done, the design for the units was done as well. And that is what typically happens with a transfer agreement. But because we're out of compliance, if you will, we're asking for your approval of an amendment to the transfer agreement itself. And Chip, I don't know if you needed to add anything to that comment. He's shaking his head no.
I'll
And
move
then-
for approval. Let me move for approval, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McQueenie, besides us sort of being out of time, and I talked to Giona earlier today about it, was there any other major changes to this agreement? I did not peruse it in any with a fine tooth comb, but
No, so there's no change to the transfer agreement. What happens in these situations is we enter into the transfer agreement, which is essentially like our purchase and sale agreement, agreeing to transfer the property. The transfer agreement also says there's a development agreement to be entered into, and that has to be approved by city council, and that wasn't done. Carter Dupree actually prepared that from Ainsworth for us to get approved. So we're getting sort of both approved at the same time. The development agreement, as opposed to the transfer of the property, controls the development and specifically the affordable housing portion of the development on the property. So that's the importance of that agreement. We don't really have a true standard form, but it's mostly the same form from project to project with minor changes. A lot of times attorneys want us to be reasonable in certain respects, and I always try to explain to people that governments have to be reasonable. You're not allowed to be an unreasonable government. But
people will take exception to that comment, perhaps. I'm not sure.
yeah. But that's essentially it. So it's the transfer agreement, the extension of the deadline, and the approval of the development agreement.
Okay. Was there any other questions following Mr. McQueenie's comments? I just wanted to make sure the record was clear as to that. Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Jackson.
I was just hoping maybe because we have not voted on the development agreement before, is that correct? This is the first time we're.
Correct.
So maybe you could give us a little more background on the development agreement. What's its intention and when will it happen? And
Certainly, and that would be my next point. Certainly, the development agreement that you have before you is, as I indicated earlier, to construct 6 single-family detached homes at 67 America Street. And Councilmember Waring may remember this. We had this with another nonprofit several years ago. So we've been seeking to build on this property for some time that the city has owned. I have the current developer and Florence Peters on the phone, who's our housing development officer. But the total development cost for this is $1.7 million approximately. So we're looking at a little over $289,000 per home, which is very costly for us relative to affordable housing. So as I ask for your approval of this development agreement, we will also need to subsidize beyond the $30,000 that we've already invested for those pre-development costs. We would need to subsidize and provide those end buyers at least $83,000. We're asking for a $500,000 subsidy amount for the total project. And so that amount would go towards the end buyer, but certainly would make the developer whole. I would say to real estate that we have an increase in contingency in this particular contract. And we have that in there because of the unanticipated costs that many are seeing in the development arena right now. And ideally, this will cover what any unanticipated costs might be. Our lumber costs right now, based on the last figure that I saw, was in excess of 208%. We have worked with JJR Development before and have gotten a check back. So we're hoping that the same thing will happen again. But these costs are certainly higher than what we've seen before. But based on the efforts that are undertaken, that this is a 90-year restrictive covenant with 2 10-year successive covenants, these units will be affordable for the long term, that subsidy would be considered permanent subsidy, which means it transfers to every buyer going forward. They have the benefit of that permanent subsidy. And it, again, it helps to meet the need that we have in the community.
And so just to
Thank you.
follow up, please, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
so the development agreement that we're going to recommend to the full council to approve at Ways and Means, right?
That's correct.
That is that $500,000 subsidy, one-time subsidy is also part of the development agreement.
Yes, ma'am, it
Right.
is.
Okay.
Correct.
And then can you just say for the record, what income ranges of occupants, purchasers will be benefited by the housing, the subsidy and the,
Sure. This particular development are those persons who earn 120% of the area median income. And Ms. Peters, I think is on the call, has been working with a number of folks who are in that income category who have been looking for houses in particular on the peninsula. And so this in fact would help meet that particular need.
and if they didn't have a subsidy, what would be their probably approved lending, borrowing amount? So we're gonna let them buy a house that's valued at 289,000, 290,000 essentially. We're gonna pay it down so that it's to their
Right,
to their
most of
loan,
it- yes, ma'am.
200,000. Is
Exactly.
200,000 their maximum borrowing limit in that typical income range?
Yes, ma'am. In most cases, some borrowers, some end borrowers will bring a little bit more subsidy. The program itself only requires about $2,500 in a down payment, but many buyers now have the opportunity or have brought more to the table, which is helpful for them. But most of these buyers for this project can afford about $200,000 in a mortgage. And naturally that'll vary, but that's the 120 range right now. We just had an increase in the AMI and the area median income. And so that would be the target for this. And if we were not able to provide that subsidy, we would have to put this project on hold because it would not be affordable to anyone else in our spectrum of buyers, if you will.
Thanks. I just think it's important for us to, put that out in front of the public. There's always questions about spending taxpayers' hard-earned money for, helping people. And then maybe one final question is the source of the 500,000. Is that coming out of the Housing Trust Fund?
Yes, ma'am. The
fee in
fee in
lieu.
lieu, exactly.
Okay, so that's not coming out of taxpayers' money. It's coming out of
Coming out of public money.
contributions made by profit-taking
Private
developers to the
Right.
city.
But
Thank
it's
you.
It's public money, so we need to be mindful of that.
It's public money, but it's not
Yeah,
tax
it is public
dollars.
money. And it's just, I see your hand, Councilman Ware. I must make a comment that, not too long ago, you could buy almost any house on the peninsula north of Broad Street for $200,000. It just didn't seem out of reach to buy a quality home for the mid 100,000s not that long ago. Anyhow, Councilman Waring.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you, Councilman. I'm just curious about how big are the houses going to be? 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms? How many square feet, Ms. Johnson?
I was going to let Mr. Roberts answer that, but I'm
That's
seeing
fine.
these are 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath homes that will be constructed approximately 1,100 square feet on each one.
And you could buy a $200,000 home, a 5,000 square feet, not too long ago as well, Councilman Waring. So it's just incredible the cost of housing in the city of Charleston.
And I would mention, Councilmember Shaheed, this is also in the BAR district. Fortunately, we had Julia Martin as the architect on these, who's very well versed. And so that process didn't take as long as it traditionally has for us. And so it's really just a matter of where we are in our market relative to those costs. And I'm hearing it across the board from a number of developers. You all entertained an increase on a multifamily rental development a few weeks ago. And we're hoping that it will settle out, but the majority of folks that I've been talking to in the industry they're saying to us that it'll be a year or so before it does. So we're watching to see.
I see Mr. Roberts has his virtual hand up. So Roberts, can we unmute you and you chime in on that?
Councilman Shahid, could you hear me?
You sound like you're in a cave, but yes, we can hear you.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity from the mayor and city council, Gianna, and the rest of staff to be able to assist the city on these things. And to go to your point, if these houses were market-based, in my professional opinion, these houses would probably sell for about $525,000, if that blows your mind. But again, we appreciate the opportunity to assist the city as we have done many times before, and work with Director Johnson and Florence and the rest of her team to achieve Mayor Tecklenburg and the council's initiative to produce these. Initially, when they were in the hands of, I think, a nonprofit, a plan was for 4 houses. And what Gian and I did is replan and replat this to 6 houses. So we got a 50% increase on the amount of proportional density. And we will certainly do the best that we can. We probably have 50 single-family houses that we have under construction. So these will get the benefit of our economies of scale and efficiencies and purchasing capability. And as Ms. Johnson said before, the last one we did for Ms. Johnson, we did an internal audit, and I think we returned a check for $16,000 after we were surprised we came in under budget. But as they say in a mutual fund, past performance does not indicate future performance. We will do the best that we can, and we will treat this with the utmost care, and we're going to do these simultaneously all at once, and we'll do it with our capital for the city. And this is sort of an unusual arrangement where we're coming up with the build cost up front, and then Ms. Johnson's going to subsidize the down payments later to make us whole. But we enjoy doing this type of project. It will be beautiful, and on a smaller scale, be similar to what we did at Joe Ingles Street for the Riley administration with Ms. Johnson. So any particular questions on this that I can answer before the council meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Councilmember Waring, you had a...
Yeah, I just got some observations, and in that this was going to be affordable housing. CPW or CWS has I think we have something to reduce the tap fees or something for affordable housing. So somehow in this process, Mr. Roberts and Ms. Johnson, hopefully you take advantage of that. Yes. And the second thing is, I just wondered, remember we passed a smaller lot ordinance last year? Would that help at all in trying to reconfigure from 4 to 6 with more flexible frontage and
it would have helped us. We had to go through, Gian and I had to go through a very laborious zoning process where we had a provocateur in the neighborhood who lived several blocks away that was trying to use some knowledge of his zoning to try to thwart the project. And I think we initially had this on the BZA zoning docket in early March. Then the pandemic hit, and then we started having the virtual meetings in June. And it was sort of like the Thriller in Manila. We had to prepare for the zoning meeting. John and I probably were on there for at least an hour and 15 minutes. And of course we prevailed. But I think the new smaller lot zoning ordinance would have circumvented that particular spitefulness of a NIMBY that didn't want to see affordable housing built in the neighborhood and use their special skills to try to thwart us. But I think the new ordinance on that probably would have handled this respectfully. But
maybe the next project. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of item A, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And let the record reflect that Councilmember Appel has recused himself from any consideration. All right, we're going to move on to item B. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Item B on our agenda is a request for authorization of the mayor to execute the necessary documents for the purchase of some properties on Cunnington Avenue. It's 1.45 acres. This will include 15 rental units. Jonah, you're back on
Yes, sir.
at home plate on the swing on this one for us as well, please, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Excited to present the purchase and sale agreement for 3, 5, 7, and 9 Cunnington Avenue which is in the Upper Peninsula or neck area of the city of Charleston. The request before you is for $1,425,000, $1 million of which would come from our CARES Act funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development through Congress. And then a portion of these funds would come from our fee in lieu dollars, or the balance of those funds. Our goal here is two-pronged. We would build the future navigation center or Homeless to Hope Center in this area, along with about 50 to 55 units. I think it's closer to 50, to be perfectly honest. Apartments for permanent rental apartments for persons transitioning out of homelessness and those who need permanent affordable rental housing. So this is an opportunity that we have been seeking for some time now. And we're excited for this opportunity. The value of the property itself came in at $1,650,000. And so the price that we are paying is slightly below that. And this is simply for acquisition. Currently, we sit on approximately $700,000 that would go towards the actual construction of the navigation center. And separate apart from the city, the Mayor's Commission on Homelessness and Affordable Housing is working toward helping to bring about capital to help with the construction of that. And I have begun looking at and working with others in the affordable housing industry to look at other forms of capital to bring about the permanent affordable rental apartments. Our state housing office has what they call a small rental program where they provide several millions of dollars to bring about less than 55 units on site. And so we're looking at that and several other funding options that would help us meet the need. HUD has given us a mandate with these dollars to expend in 3 years. And so we have our deadline, and this is what we're presenting before you this evening.
So where are we on that 3-year deadline, by the way, Gianna?
We just received the monies. The mayor just signed the grant agreement at the beginning of this year. So we still have 3 years in effect. We have begun looking at the engineering on this and how we bring about the appropriate stormwater management at the site, working with Matt Fountain and Kenzie Holton and that team. This property is in an X zone, so low risk for flooding, but we do have some issues out there that we will need to address to make sure we have the proper stormwater management and just supply of infrastructure for this site. Previously, you all may have recalled, if you've ever ridden by, there are 4 single-family detached homes on the site. They've probably been there since the 60s or so, but the folks that owned it used to have daycares there for elderly persons that they used to, they provided that service at that particular site. But our goal is to demolish those homes. They're older, not in very good shape. And so we would demolish those and then increase the density at that site pretty substantially.
I'll take a motion to approve item B.
I move for approval.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, Councilmember Waring.
Just one thing is, I guess in due diligence on this, Mr. Mayor, I think it's a great idea, Ms. Johnson. But this isn't a bad, but it's close to a lot of graveyards up there. Anyway, we had any sounding around there just to make sure we're not buying a piece of property got an unmarked grave or two on it. I mean, we didn't think the Gilliard had any graves over there. And obviously, we found out in a very direct way that they did have graves. I go to a lot of funerals. A lot of them end up that way. So
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And we're looking at that, Councilmember Waring. My construction manager, Mike Kiefer, we're doing a geotech, a phase 1 and some other work for that very reason, to make sure, because there is a graveyard probably not a full mile down the road heading northwest. And it's not Magnolia, and I don't remember the name, but I know the graveyard because I've been to services
there's
over
some
there.
graveyards if you go through the backyard.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
I mean, it's like you can throw a rock and hit them. So I mean,
exactly.
Just in case.
So, yes, sir. Absolutely. We're looking at that to be sure. We have a little over 100+ days for our due diligence. And so we've already started that just to make sure we stay ahead of this.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Waring, as you were talking, I just pulled it up on my Google Maps, and you're right on point with that. This is Magnolia's not too far from that. The Unity and Friendship Society Cemetery,
Right.
St. Lawrence is all. This is all in that same general vicinity of that, and so you're right. We're not sure what we may be finding out there if we did some sounding on that. Mr. Mayor, I think I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's an excellent point, Councilmember Waring. And Gianna, if I may suggest, Mike Wack has been working closely with the Gullah Society, and they've been doing tremendous work on identifying grave sites. They've got that ground penetrating little device. I think they can look for them. So you might get Grant Mishu is the guy's name. He's like an expert on local cemeteries, and see if he's got any information on it. In this case, I must say,
Will do.
we didn't buy we're not buying the property for this reason, but it actually, maybe works in our favor. Sometimes you do get a little bit of pushback, NIMBYism, when you're providing services to the homeless. And by the way, thank you again to Hal Kaplan, who has allowed us the use of 529 Meeting Street at no charge for the last 2+ years. And we just know the day is coming when Mr. Kaplan's going to want to redevelop that property. And so it really was incumbent upon us to find a suitable alternate location. And the size of this property is large enough to accommodate some housing on it, as well as a comprehensive services to those who are experiencing homelessness, who are not, in 180 place. And it really is an ideal opportunity. So the funny thing is, it's got commercial properties on either end, auto repair shop on one side, and then a real estate office on the other side. And then besides that, it's cemeteries all the way around here. Bethany Lutheran Cemetery is right across the street from it. I don't know which church has the cemetery behind it. Judge Fielding got buried in the cemetery. Councilmember Waring right across, literally a stone's throw away on the other side. So we won't be bothering anybody at this point, I think. It's a great location. We'll have some room. It does have we know that there's some drainage issues. The folks on Meeting Street who were building over there by Santi's had to deal with some of the similar issues. So we may have to get some easements through a couple of the cemeteries for our outfall, but we certainly think it's worth pursuing those solutions and putting this property to use. We've all seen, I'll be honest with you, when we started negotiations, I'd say $1.4 million was market rate. And now it took a few months to get to this point, and values, as you know, across the city are going up. So I feel fortunate that we're able to get this under contract.
All right, let's call the question. I think we've had a good discussion about this, and I feel like it's all very positive. So all those in favor of item B signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. I told Gianna earlier when I chatted with her, it's always such a pleasure talking to her, because what we're doing here is just such positive stuff for our citizens and our members of our community. And Gianna, thank you again for your hard work always. You keep the ball.
Thank you for your support.
Well, you got that. And I think you've got this full council support on your initiative. So thank you so much. Item B is approval of a second amendment to the management agreement between the city and Charleston Digital Quarter regarding space at 22 West Edge. I see Matt is jumped on to his video immediately because he knew I was going to call on him. So Matt, you want to give us a little background on this and what we're doing with this second amendment to the management agreement?
Yes, Councilmember. This is just a request to amend the management agreement for 22 West Edge with the Charleston Digital Corridor for additional 12 months on a month-by-month basis.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve
I
item
move
C?
for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So Matt, what is the major change in the second amendment to this agreement?
It is just a time extension. The current agreement is set to expire on June 18th.
All right.
We have a new tenant that just came in on May 15th. So this just allows for some consistency for everybody involved, and we can determine if and when we want to transition away from the CDC managing the space on our behalf.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir.
So I did want to add a little report to the benefits that we've seen from our support of this lease, which allowed 22 West Edge building to go to completion. Our first real tenant was part of the growth of a company called Vicor Scientific. Since their inception, they've hired over 250 people in the city of Charleston, and they've been growing like a weed. So they're making some other arrangements, and we have a new tenant, as Matt just referred to, and this is a research institute on brain chemistry and brain function. And I met the doctor last week that's leading that up, and he says there's already 3 other companies that are starting up because of this startup. So it's having just the effect that we intended to promote life science businesses at West Edge and in our city, and hiring and creating new higher paying jobs. So I think that's good news.
And thanks for pointing that out, Mayor. I think that it's just sort of, if you build it, they will come. And that's what we're doing here. All right. All right. Any further questions, discussions on item C? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Wonderful. Ms. Ferdina, I think you're up for item number D, is a request for authorization for the mayor to execute a permanent easement between the city of Charleston and CPW for a utility easement. It's over by, I think, close to the, over by Maury Boulevard, on Maury Boulevard and Limehouse. So Susan?
Yes, sir.
I just, it's a small little project we're talking about over here, huh?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Tecklenburg and Councilmember Waring spoke of this project a few months ago. And so now we are bringing it forward to you all for authorization. And it's an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a new permanent easement between the city and CPW that will authorize them to access our property, Murray Boulevard primarily, for access to their wastewater tunnels and to their shafts. In exchange, the city would receive $1 million in consideration. There is a plan that's attached to the easement, to the easement as an exhibit, which has a hatched area on it, which indicates where the easement would be. You'll see it's primarily east-west, a part of Murray Boulevard, and then a portion that intersects with Limehouse Street. We did spend some time working out issues of notice to the city when CPD would need to get onto Murray Boulevard for purposes of non-emergency maintenance and repairs, as well as emergency matters. I think we've worked that out to our satisfaction. We know that CPW will be a good partner with us. Matt Fountain had the opportunity to review this and give us some input. So we're comfortable with that, and hopefully there won't be any delays to the low battery project. And there's also going to be coordination with our Department of T&T to make sure that traffic would be minimized, traffic disruption would be minimized when they have to get on the street for access to their shafts. That being said, the other provisions are fairly standard. Ken Hill is here, as well as their attorney, Jennifer Blumenthal, and they're happy to answer any questions that you all have about this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of
I'll
item
move for
D
approval.
first.
I'll second.
Okay, so Mr. Fountain, I see you're on. Did you want to add anything to what Ms. Herdina has talked about?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, as Ms. Herdina mentioned, we reviewed it at Stormwater to try to minimize potential impact on the low battery project. This would be within the limits of the phase 3 construction work, and we've coordinated with CWS to try to make sure we're working in good faith to minimize those efforts.
Very good. Mr. Hill, thank you for joining us. Anything we can add or talk about while I got you available?
No, just thank you very much for your consideration. We really appreciate working with the city on this project, and we certainly have no plans immediately to get in there to do any work, but we need the capability to do so when and if that happens, and I think this instrument allows us to do that, and we look forward to its approval. So thank you very much.
This is just another fine example of city and CWS working together hand in hand for a common purpose, and we appreciate all your cooperation and work on this, and the work that I know that Councilman Waring had a hand in the mayor in putting this together.
Matter of fact, the mayor had his hand up, Councilman.
I think, Mayor, I think you had your hand up before Councilmember Jackson. Did you want to add anything?
If you would, I was just going to reiterate the important and valued partnership between the city and Charleston Water Service. Ken, Jennifer, thank you very much. And Susan mentioned both my name and Councilmember Waring at the outset, but Councilmember Waring deserves the credit on this one. I can tell you that. Thank you, Councilmember.
No, Mr. Mayor, back at you. It's a great team effort. So, no, great team effort. But I'm including CWS in that as well. So thank you, Jennifer.
We're going to create a mutual admiration society in a few minutes.
That's right. Right here, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson, did something else you wanted to add?
No, I just want to agree that everything that I've been part of with CWS is totally cooperative and the extra mile. So thank you very much. My mother always said my curiosity will kill the cat, but I was just curious, how did you do all of this without a permanent easement? I mean, haven't you had to have access to these same underground whatever?
Well, actually, we own the property there adjacent to the proposed easement, and so what this will do is give us an opportunity in the future to market that property. So if we have the ability to locate in the street, we don't obviously need that property any longer. So it's another opportunity to put that property on the tax rolls, if you will, too. So just a virtual win-win.
Excellent.
Great.
Very
Thanks
good.
for telling us.
All right, let's call the question for approval of item D. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the ayes have it. That next item is dealing with the authorization for the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement with the Hollings family on Canal Street. And I just gotta say that, people wonder why we have flooding issues in Charleston. Well, when you have streets and roads called Water Street and Adgers Wharf and Canal Street, there's a reason why we have some issues with flooding, because they really were a wharf on Adgers Wharf, and it really was a canal on Canal Street. And so before the rules we have today about landfill, we filled in these streets, and this is another example of one of those areas. So, Susan, you want to take this one away? What we're trying to do, we make a purchase for this piece of property for, I think, $43,500.
Yes, sir. So again, we're asking for your council's authorization for the mayor to execute a purchase and sales agreement between the city and 3 members of the Hollings family so that the city can purchase this property. The address is 0 Canal Street. And it actually is generally located off of Lockwood Boulevard, generally behind Buffane Street, but it actually fronts on some marsh property. The purchase price would be $43,500. We have a 60-day inspection period where we'll be looking at if there are any environmental issues. Don't expect any problems, however. And this is going to be used for long-term protection of Lockwood Boulevard for drainage protection. And my cohort and partner in crime here today, Matt Fountain, has just popped up, so he'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has about this. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna move for approval.
Is there a motion? There's a motion.
I'll second.
There's a second. All right, Mr. Fountain, before we take a vote, anything you want to add to what our wonderful legal advisor has told us about
Yeah,
this?
just very briefly, this area is a prime area for kind of the Dutch dialogue approach of storing water behind a barrier, which is Lockwood Boulevard in this situation. So we do deal with a lot of the internal rainwater from the peninsula, both that drains from Lockwood into this area, as well as it drains out of Colonial Lake down Canal Street and into this area. So it's sort of one of the epicenters of where we manage stormwater internally within this kind of southwestern portion of the peninsula. It's a good opportunity at a very reasonable rate to be able to secure that for the future.
Okay.
So again, I'm curious, are we just going to naturalize it, or is there something to like demolish there that makes it, will make it better for the drainage overall?
So it's somewhat naturalized at the moment. It's more the opportunity to prevent fill and build in an area that is currently managing a lot of stormwater, even though it's under private ownership, rather than an opportunity to maybe make a large enhancement to stormwater, but it does preserve and maintain that. We have a number of city-owned acres kind of in that vicinity around it. So it's sort of preserving that last little bit of available storage for the future.
Very good. I know that, by the way, that not too far is Buffane Street. I used to live at 104 Buffane Street. When I was doing some digging around that area, I did some research. Buffane Street was used as a canal to float lumber down to the mill down off of what is now Lockwood Boulevard. But there was a mill down there, and that's what they did. They floated lumber, trees with a mill. So, Councilman Rappel, I think I saw your hand up, your finger up anyhow.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Chairman Shade. I went and plugged in the TMS number and looked at this parcel, and I mean, it's marsh. And I'm trying to understand, well, two questions. I mean, have we looked into the title on this and determined that this is actually owned by people and not the state of South Carolina under some sort of, I'm drawing a blank on a public trust and, erosion type theory? Number one, do they have good title? And then number two, how is marsh worth $43,500? There's no way this property could ever be developed for anything. So I'm just curious on some of those points right there.
I can try to answer both of those questions, Councilmember Rappel. On the first one, during the inspection period, we will confirm that they have good title. They have represented that they do. And so that will certainly be something that we'll be looking at during our due diligence period. I think you're rightfully concerned about that. And then the second question is what we did in this case, and I think it was a reasonable approach, was because the property has been valued at various prices throughout recent time, can it be filled, can it be developed, can it not, whatever. We just went with the market value that appears on the county's website. And that's the approach that we took. So hopefully that answers those questions.
If we find out that there's not good title, we won't buy it. If we find out we're buying water. We're not going to buy it, and we'll just have to address it. But this gives the mayor authorization to look into it and into those negotiations. So,
Yes, sir.
all right. Any further questions or discussions about? Excellent point, Councilmember Pale. Thanks for bringing it up.
And just to clarify, this is coming from the drainage fund, correct? Is that right?
I believe that's correct, but I think Matt, if he's on the line, or Amy can.
I believe that's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, let's call the question. All those in favor of the mayor trying to purchase Canal Street property, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. I notice on our agenda, we've got F and G are for executive sessions. Susan, can we go into executive sessions for both of these at the same time, or do we have to go in and come out and go in and come out?
We need to do the latter. We need to go in and come out and go in and come out, because the parties are, the people who need to be involved are different.
All right. So there's a request that we go into executive session regarding
moved,
the
Mr.
public
Chairman.
safety purpose. There's a motion on
I'll
the
second.
floor in a second. So all those